we don't have to wait for something to change. We just can be the change. We can
Right.
create whatever we want to create. If I am not respected as a leader in your institution or in your organization or just in your eyes, that's okay. I will show you.
Right.
You'll see it, and then you'll have no choice but to say, "Oh gosh,
Right.
I wish I would have worked with her."
Welcome, mompreneurs. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Good Enough Mompreneur podcast. I hope you are doing well. Thank you so much for your time. And wow, this is an incredible episode. If you are someone who has had to persevere through adversity, or you're finding yourself in a situation where you are not sure how you're going to persevere or keep going, this episode is definitely for you. Jess Winns, who I interview on this podcast episode, is so inspirational and has a new book, Beneath the Skin. And we are going to talk about her book, and you're going to hear all about her story. But first, I would like to invite you to do a few things. Number one, please go check out my new website, mombusinesscoach.com. You can see all the information on how you can connect with me there if you would like to do that. And then number two, if you are enjoying this podcast, if it resonates with you, if you're following the show already, if you could please do me a favor and leave the show a review wherever you listen to podcasts. It's totally free, but it really helps other people find the podcast. So if you could just take a few minutes to do that, I would appreciate it so much. Then you get extra bonus stars if you do a couple of other things. If you follow and subscribe to the podcast, it's totally free. You will get a little notification every time we publish an episode on Mondays to keep you going through the week. And then if you would share the episode with any family or friends who you think would find the podcast helpful, that would be great. All right, so after that little invitation, I want to get right into the interview because it was really powerful and emotional. And I want to emphasize one thing. As mompreneurs, we often have to just follow our intuition and follow our hearts in our businesses. And sometimes we don't always know why we're called to do certain things, but we know we need to do them. And this podcast for me is an example of that. And there were times where I'm building my following and creating podcast episodes, and I wasn't sure who would want to listen, whether it was resonating, whether it was really the right thing that I was supposed to be doing. And one indication from the universe that you are indeed on the right path and you are doing what you're supposed to do is when synchronicities start showing up. And the synchronicities that occurred surrounding this podcast interview and learning more about Jess and our similarities in our life, both being from Chicago, being raised by single mothers, living in an apartment in the inner city, having to really reinvent ourselves against a lot of adversity in our lives, particularly surrounding poverty and parents who may have had mental health struggles and all of the things. This was so much part of my story. So it really moved me, and I am sure that it will move you too if you can identify with any of those things in your own past. So without further ado, here is my interview with the incredible, the resilient, the brave, the wise Jess Winns, who's the author of the new book, Beneath the Skin. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of talking to Jess Winns. You're a mom, first and foremost, but you're the founder of Ari Rose Body Care. You're a board certified holistic health practitioner, a functional nutrition counselor, and transformational leadership coach. I mean, so one of the exciting things that we'll talk about today is you're adding author to that list of accolades. And your first book is coming out, Beneath the Skin. And I'm going to get my own copy.
Oh.
And so it is reflecting on your journey, which we're going to talk about today, and what it means to break past those societal expectations and blaze your own path. So, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Angela. I am so grateful to be here and that you are allowing me to be on your platform.
Oh my gosh. The pleasure is all mine because let me tell you, I have another business before I started doing coaching for moms and starting this podcast. And there have been moments where when you start anything, why am I doing this? Who's going to listen? Who's going to want to talk to me? So number one, the fact anybody shares their time with me that's the greatest gift anybody can give anyone, right?
Likewise.
Right. Yeah. It's just like, but along the way, you don't know who's going to listen or who it's resonating with, or, sometimes even your purpose, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So, in learning more about you, some of that purpose is coming into focus on this podcast right now. Okay.
Yes, I'm so excited. We talked a little bit about
this. If you're listening to this, you can't see this, but I just learned this morning that you and I went to the same college.
What? Wow. Oh my gosh. That is so exciting.
We both went to DePaul University. We both grew up in an apartment in Chicago.
Really?
We both went to Chicago high schools. We're both girl moms. We're both, we have emerged and reinvented ourselves from the inner city. I mean,
absolutely.
It's like, what?
Right.
Then
okay, there's more.
Then I learned about this organization that you started that helps inner city students travel. I own a travel business.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah.
And I have been wondering, why I want to do more with this business. I want to do some work and give back and find a focus that, so we'll talk about that. And I hope we can collaborate on some level on that. But what?
Oh, I know. Yeah. Crazy. And you're living in Florida, so it's not like you're even still in Chicago. Like
no. Yeah. And I mean, actually, I first took my kids to Chicago, and my husband, who's from the Boston area, I first took them to Chicago this last Thanksgiving. And they loved it. They were just like, when can we go back? So yeah, I love Chicago, and it gave me, it just connected me back to the grit that it can give you, the energy it has. And, I mean, there are a lot of problems with the city, of course, but if you choose to take from it the positive things that it has, all the opportunity and, the education and the arts and just the energy of the place, it really can make a difference in your life. So,
absolutely.
So yeah, I just couldn't believe all of those
parallels. Yeah,
I know. I mean, it's just crazy.
Totally
so, Right.
Yes.
We were meant to
Wow.
have this
Hmm.
conversation.
Hmm. What was your major in at DePaul?
Yeah, I was a political science major.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay. I guess that's the only difference there. I
right, yeah, you're
communications, but
okay.
yeah, I mean, still, I guess the similarity would be that
Right.
we're not in the same, we're not actually doing what we went to school for, if that's
Right, right.
right.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. But it definitely, I'm sure we can see where it,
Hmm.
helped us, and it's just
Of
part of our
course.
journey.
Of
And
course.
I really loved going to school in the inner city. But
Hmm.
so yeah, why don't you tell our listeners about you and your business and where you're at and a little about your story?
Yes. So oh my gosh, where do I begin? And you feel free to like interject into all,
No.
right? But right now, where I'm currently at is the KC area. So I'm Kansas City area now. But I was born and raised in the city of Chicago. I would say I think I was like a fourth generation Chicago born,
Hmm.
because my great grandparents migrated
Wow.
there. So yeah, my mom's side came from like Eastern Europe. They're Jewish, and my father's side is Mexican. So he
Hmm.
actually was born, raised, and lived in Mexico when my mom met him. So he actually didn't know him or didn't have much of a relationship growing up at all with him.
What the heck? This is crazy. This is
Wow.
crazy.
Yeah.
Same
Yeah. Well, then
story.
it's like we can really relate on even what that's like, right?
Yes.
Growing up in a single parent
Hmm.
household without a father. Like you
Yep.
said, you grew up, was it a family building that you lived in?
Yep.
Or
Hmm.
okay. Yeah,
Yep.
grew up in a family, three
Hmm.
flat. Right above me was my great grandmother and my great aunt. Then above them, my great aunt and the cousin on the third floor. So it was like a full family building,
Right.
which that was the beauty of it, right? Like
Hmm.
as
Right.
much as it sucked growing up in a basement, and to me as a little girl, that like when I reflect on it, it feels dark, it feels sad, and it feels like it was a prison. That's how,
Mm.
because it bars on the window, it was very dark, sun could barely get inside,
Mm.
paint chipping on the pipes. It just was not where you would want to raise a child. And
Right.
I know that that's not necessarily where my mom wanted to have to raise me. It was the circumstances that she
Hmm.
was in her life
Hmm.
and raising me by herself. And that is just, that was the time that was
Yeah.
she was at. So that was my childhood, but I was blessed to have family and be able to connect with them, because even though I didn't grow up with a lot, and we were, by society, American society standards, poor, you know,
Hmm.
uh, then it still allowed me to see, okay, I have my family here. I have that love, that
Hmm.
unconditional
Hmm.
love and connection,
Hmm.
which transcended anything material. And
Hmm.
it gave me a lot of perspective at a very
Hmm.
young age.
Mm. Yeah.
Mhm.
So what was it that led you to becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, it's interesting because I do think so much of it started in childhood.
Mm.
And I didn't even know that it was possible to have your own business.
Mm.
I was clueless to that. We didn't have, when I was growing up, we didn't have a lot of business owners
Hmm.
in the family. Everybody kind of on the other side, they went to school, they like became professionals. On our side, my mom worked just in restaurants and then car sales, and eventually worked for the city. And then my aunt as well. So like everybody just had these 9 to 5 kind of jobs. And that was what I was told that I would do. I'd grow up, go to school, get your education, and get a good job.
Mm-hmm.
So that was what I had in my head that would be the trajectory for myself and my future. But as a kid, I was super creative. I was an only child. I was constantly drawing, painting, anything I could get my hands on, sewing little clothing for my dolls,
Mm.
taught myself how to do that. I self-taught in a lot of different things because my mom was working. My great grandmother was too old to really teach me much of anything, so I was by myself.
Mm.
And I attribute my creativity and my ability to start projects and get things going and pour myself into them to that experience.
Mm.
So that I feel like is what, when I got older, played into me saying, oh, I have this idea. Okay, well, how are you going to execute that idea? How is that going to come to reality? Well, I'll just create it. I'll make a PowerPoint of my vision and start from there and then figure it out. And
Mm.
I remember when I started the nonprofit organization, and I didn't know that that was actually a business. I didn't know out of college that a nonprofit was actually a business. I thought this was like
Wow.
a separate type of thing that,
Yeah.
like, there's it's still a business at the end of the day. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit
Right.
entity.
Mm-hmm.
So just the ignorance there, right? It was like, it's mind-boggling, but it's just how much we don't know when we're not
Mm-hmm.
exposed to it. And then
Right.
all of college, that wasn't something that was talked about. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go to school for that either. So it didn't compute in my head at the time, but I started the nonprofit. And I remember everybody in my family and people that I knew were like, how are you going to do this? And I was just like, just do it. And I did, and got the entity going and became 501c3 certified with the IRS so that we could be
Mm-hmm.
tax deductible with donations. Recruited a board of directors, volunteer staff, fundraising, all of that from nothing, from just a vision. Mm-hmm. So that was my first entry into this world of entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm. So at some point, you then took steps to start your Ari Rose Body Care business, right?
Mhm. Oh yeah.
So what was that like? So did you get that quote unquote job that you showed up at and then realized I need to
Hmm.
do something else?
Hmm. Yes, yes. So I do talk about this in my book too, about kind of the journey from graduating
Mm-hmm.
to, getting what I thought was the job that I should be working, in an office
Mm.
somewhere. To starting the nonprofit. But before I started the nonprofit, I actually had I graduated in the recession, so that's
Okay.
something that definitely gets to be mentioned because it played a huge
Mm.
part in job hunting and
Mm.
securing a job that was stable that I could rely on, and
Mm.
um, definitely didn't get paid remotely close to anything.
Right.
But essentially, before I started empowering you through travel, I actually just was like, I'm gonna work at a grocery store. I'm gonna work at my favorite grocery store. I won't say the name because it's like shame, it's like publicizing them, but I had like a favorite grocery store. I was like, I'm gonna work at my favorite grocery store until I can start this nonprofit.
Uh-huh.
And what a humbling experience that was, to be college graduate, packaging up groceries and seeing people that I knew and packaging their
Mm.
groceries and like,
Mm-hmm.
but it was my plan to get to the next thing. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
like I had to be there. It was like I chose to be there because I was working towards something bigger,
Mm-hmm.
and it was humbling. It was one of those things where, you know, I'm pushing carts and I'm packing groceries, and this is really where I'm at in my life. I'm a single mom. I had my daughter at a
Mm-hmm.
very young age.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So that was like, there was a lot of roller coaster ups and downs, figuring life out before I even remotely got to Ari Rose, which is my body care company,
Mm-hmm.
that I started about 6 years ago. So it's like I always say I've lived multiple lifetimes because it truly feels like that in so
Right.
many ways.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Ari Rose came once I had my second daughter.
Mm-hmm. And what gave you the courage to start that business? What was it where it's like you just had this, what gave you the inspiration?
Hmm. Yeah, so the courage, I would say, which is a great question because with the nonprofit, I eventually passed that on to activists in the city of Chicago
Mm-hmm.
who were like, we can take this over and we know what to do with it. And you go have a baby. Because basically, I got pregnant and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
how am I going to continue this nonprofit work where I'm not making any money and I have another child on the way?
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't feasible financially or economically. It made no sense for me to keep going. And I tried. Like I really,
Mm-hmm.
really, really tried. I wanted it so bad. But the reality is that if you can't take care of yourself, you really can't take care of others. And
Mm-hmm.
that was
Mm-hmm.
like, how can I help support others financially
Yeah.
in this way if I'm struggling?
Right.
That was a very real wake up moment. And it also changed my relationship with money too. Like
Mm-hmm.
seeing how money plays into our life and it's not a bad thing. And in order to do good, you have to be able to have an income and support yourself and be in a good place. So that was a pretty powerful realization. But with the nonprofit, because I started that from nothing, I always said, if I can do this without any resources
Yeah.
and financial support, I'll absolutely be able to start a for-profit entity that
Mm-hmm.
I have a product to provide
Mm-hmm.
and sell. And so when I finally decided to move forward with it, it just it was like it flowed. It just went. And I resisted it for like 4 years. I almost didn't start the
Yeah.
company at all.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, because after I had my second daughter, we moved to Austin, Texas, and we were living there. And I thought, this is like a fresh start. I'm in a new state. I can
Mm-hmm.
just get a job and live a
Mm-hmm.
happy life here.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't work out in any way like that. And I ended up a year and a half later in Costa Rica and then was there with my daughters. And then I came back to Chicago. These are all long story short because it's
Yeah.
like so
Yeah.
much. And I do
Yeah.
talk about that in the book. But when I came back to Chicago, that's when I said, okay, now is the time to start the business. And because I had started making product 4 years prior to that,
Mm-hmm.
and people had already started to like purchase it and try it out,
Mm-hmm.
they asked me for it. They had been asking the whole time, like, when are you gonna come back? When are you gonna make this product? When can we buy more? So it was like the world around me was letting me know,
Right.
let's go, let's go, let's go.
Right. So, what were some of those things that were holding you back, like mentally? They
Mhm.
probably were like a lot of mental drama happening.
Absolutely. I think that's normal for us as moms, as
Mm-hmm.
women. Like our
Right.
inclination is to be risk averse.
Right.
We're biologically wired to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that we can provide for our family and like keep them alive and our kids alive and safe.
Right.
And in order to do that, you have to be as not risky as
Right.
possible.
Mm-hmm. That's a
So,
really good point. That's a really good point that I don't think anybody's made before, but that's true. Yeah.
Hmm.
You want to
Yeah.
take the most absolute course that you know and is dependable and reliable.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yes. And it makes complete sense to do that, I think, especially because at the time I was alone with the two girls. So I could only do what I knew would, if I spend this, I can make this. And not
Hmm.
going over, putting all my savings into something without knowing that this is what I'm going to get in return, and,
Hmm.
some shots in the dark. I had a pretty clear idea. So that's when I said, okay, people are asking for it. I know I'm going to get sales. What I really had to get over was my worth and my value. Like, am I worthy enough for people to spend this money on what
Right.
I'm producing? Like, they're
Right.
saying they want it, but I still feel very uncomfortable with selling something and getting money for it. It was like a
Isn't that
strange.
amazing? Yeah.
Hmm.
You have
It,
all of that drama going on in your head about money and your
mhm.
worth. And
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of those things come up for us, I think, as entrepreneurs, because and this is why I love entrepreneurship. It's like the most amazing mirror for
Yeah.
our lives and for what's
Right.
going on inside of us.
Right.
So,
And I
like,
think, yeah, I I mean, one thing that I think about, and we probably had a shared experience and probably led to you creating the nonprofit, was it's very hard to kind of break free of that environment, especially in an inner city where that's your world. And usually it's your neighborhood. You go to school in your neighborhood and you know everybody who lives around you and their problems and
mhm,
you know it all. And you really just can't see beyond that. And
mhm,
that's what I think. And two, you tell yourself a story about where you came from, you know? And that is so hard to step out of that and
mhm.
live life on a different level and feel
Yes,
worthy of that.
absolutely, 1000%. I cannot agree with you more. And one of the things I've always said is, like, the greatest disease, in my opinion, is poverty, because it gets into your head and you can't
Right.
see that on from the outside looking in to people. Like, when you see someone, you don't know that they're and it doesn't, I guess, even thinking about it now, it doesn't have to just be poverty. It could just be trauma of any sort that you
Right.
have experienced in your life,
Right.
that's in your whole being, and that is what your subconscious mind has been,
Mm-hmm.
wired with. And now
Right.
you operate your whole life based off of that subconscious programming.
Right.
It's terrifying, but it's also why it's so important to do the work of personal development, or
Right.
to take the risks and take the chances and put yourself out there, because you are going to see yourself in that process, and you're going to see what is holding you back and why, and then you can make the changes. Then you can actually decide to rewrite the story.
Right. And I was having a conversation earlier this week about the concept where as an entrepreneur, your business is only going to grow to the heights that you do as the CEO, or whatever title you want to give yourself. You are the leader. You're so
Mhm.
whatever limitations you have, your business is going to have.
That's right.
So, and if you want your business to continue to grow and flourish, you have to continue to grow and flourish.
Hmm.
There's just no way around it. And it is the best personal growth development that you could ever go through.
It
Your
is.
your skeletons will hunt you down.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. No, there's no running away from it. It's like the
Hmm.
more you suppress it, the more it comes up, the more it
Right.
comes out, the more it's in your
Right.
face and it shows up. And either you address it and you
Yeah.
deal with it and you work through it and you heal, or you will stay stuck in that pattern.
Sure.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So it sounds like becoming an entrepreneur served you well as, you know, personal development, but how has it affected being a mom?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. So motherhood and entrepreneurship. So I've always been a mom. I was a mom first before I was a business owner, right?
Yeah.
So I've always been both,
Hmm.
technically. I've never had a business without having a child. And I think that one thing I realized was at one point was like how there in my mind, because I grew up with the worker mentality,
Yeah.
work and family were separate.
Oh.
And that was like, you go to work, you have your job, and your kids are over here.
Hmm.
And then at some point you come together. So for initially, I had that same thought pattern
Mm.
between having my own business and having kids. Okay, mommy's going over here. I'm going to work on my business or whatever I have going on, and you're over here. And make sure you don't bother me because I have work to do, and it was very separate. And there came a point in time where I said, because I am a very rebellious individual in nature, I was like, why am I putting these rules around parenting and my business? I have the business for freedom. I have the business so that I can do things on my term, how I want to do it, so that I can be my own boss.
Hmm.
So why am I blocking myself from being able to include my children in this experience? If anything, this is going to teach them something that they can take on into their life and their future and be a motivator to create what they want to create in their lives, even if they don't go with entrepreneurship. It's
Right.
totally okay.
Yeah.
But the point is that it will serve them in a great capacity that I never had. Right. So I didn't get to see that. So why should they not? And then that's when I said, okay, I'm going to involve them and they're going to be
Hmm.
very much a part of it. And, it's like no looking back now. I tell them Ari Rose is their business. It's named after the two oldest, their middle names.
Hmm.
So, like, this is yours. This is yours as much as it is mine. You have ownership over it. And when I'm working, like, we're working. When I'm
Hmm.
doing something, it's because I'm doing this for all of us.
Hmm.
And I ask you to help me with something, you're just as much a part of this. So
Hmm.
that has been the journey, and it's not an easy one. It takes a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
figuring it out, and then
Hmm.
having my third daughter and be, being in labor. I was like packaging orders while I was in labor before we went to the hospital. So, but again, it's the beauty of it. It's the
Hmm.
beauty of having your own thing and having a family at the same time.
Right. Yeah. So, what are some of the ways that you incorporate your daughters in your business?
Hmm. Yeah, so with Ari Rose, they have been to events with me and vended at events.
Hmm.
My middle daughter actually used to not feel comfortable speaking to anyone. She was not a shy kid, but when it came around like being in public, she did not want to talk to anyone
Hmm.
and would just shut down. And she decided that she wanted to create her own product. So she had developed lip balms
Hmm.
and like looked up the recipe, everything. I'm like, if you can figure out how to make it, I
Hmm.
will support you. I'll get the ingredients and you make it. At that time, we didn't. we didn't make them. So
Mm-hmm.
she did all of that, supported her in making it. And then I said, okay, well, now you have to go sell this. Because she thought I would just sell it for her.
Mm-hmm.
So she, at that point, came to events with me and got up and was talking to people as they came by, showing them her product. So they've been so involved intricately in production. My oldest daughter knows how to make product now. She packages all of our orders and ships them out. Um, Actually, she's 17, so she
Mm-hmm.
has a friend of hers that is coming by today to learn how to make product because she wants to work for the company. So I'm super pumped about that. But yeah, they've just been in it and they've been involved, and
Mm-hmm.
I've given them actual roles and responsibilities. And like I said, it's supported them in just coming out of their shell or realizing what it takes to pour into something, to commit to something
Right.
and follow through.
I love that. Yeah,
Mhm.
I love that. And I think it's going to be a while before we get to see the real impact on them from
Mhm.
being part of our businesses. But I really look forward to that day when
Mhm.
they start connecting the dots and go, oh, thanks.
Right.
you know?
Yes. They might not get it now. I think it's
oh,
something
yeah.
they will figure it out when
Mm-hmm.
they start to see the paths that their peers are taking or the challenges
Mm-hmm.
others might have. And it doesn't mean that there's not going to be challenges. Listen,
Sure.
entrepreneurship is probably one of the most challenging
Yeah.
paths that anyone can take in having a business or an entity of your own.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something really special about it that
Mm-hmm.
they will at some point
Mm-hmm.
understand.
Right. I think so too. Because I don't think seeing a parent be fulfilled in what they're doing
Mhm.
and pursuing their own passions, and I I cannot imagine that not having an impact on your children because I
No, I
mean, it
agree.
makes us happier, it makes us feel more fulfilled, and um it's definitely, and I think it's just one of the extra silver linings to what we get to do. um so what are some of those challenges that you kind of have met as a mom and an entrepreneur? And how
Mhm.
have you overcome them, whether it be managing your time or mindset blocks or all of those
Time
things?
management. Yeah, me, time management all the
Yep.
way. That is
Yeah.
the biggest one. And I'm not, I guess maybe from the outside looking in, I could come across as more of like A type, but I'm not. I'm not. I at least motherhood has relaxed me a lot to the point where I'm like, planner what? Like calendar what? I
Right.
mean, I do everything I can to keep up, but
Uh-huh.
it's still a struggle. And it's one that
Mhm.
I'm just accepting about myself, who I am, how I work, and then seeing, how I can navigate and improve in those areas, but it's just not in my wheelhouse. Like organization is not a strong suit of mine. So motherhood, my 4-year-old, I have 4, 9, and 17. So I have a very large gap in between each of them.
Mm,
And the 4-year-old is only in school 3 hours a day.
gotcha.
So I have 3 solid hours a day to do whatever I need to do
Mm-hmm.
between my business, my book, um, you name
Right.
it, that's what I have to work
Right.
with. Otherwise, I'm making food or packing up lunches or doing laundry, all the mommy things
Mm-hmm.
don't end, and I'm a single mom.
Mm-hmm.
So it isn't rainbows and unicorns. There's very much thunderstorms and mud puddles. I don't know. Like it is extremely difficult. And that pushes me to say, what do I need to do to make sure I am taking care of myself so that I am mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically capable of handling these things, even when I'm crumbling.
Yep.
Because you can do everything and you'll still have moments where you want to go cry in the closet.
Sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have a almost 16-year-old and a 10-year-old. So I know about the age gap. It's, you have to deal with people on different levels
Mhm.
with different perspectives and different abilities to understand and different motivations. So that takes a lot of skills. I mean,
Yes.
I had a conversation earlier this week where, talking about how women need to be given leadership opportunities when we have children, that we are learning all of these transferable leadership skills because
Mhm.
we're having to do the time management and the home management and the people management
Right.
that
Right.
directly translates to a business or running our own business. But
Mhm.
we don't seem to get that respect or notoriety for that development. So
Mhm. Oh yeah,
hopefully
absolutely.
that will change.
And you know what? That is part of where I say we don't have to wait for something to change. We just can be the change. We can
Right.
create whatever we want to
Right.
create. If I am not respected as a leader in your institution or in your organization or just in your eyes, that's okay. I will show you.
Right.
You'll see it, and then you'll have no choice but to say, "Oh gosh,
Right.
I wish I would have worked with her, or I wish
Yeah.
I would have," like that's like the big, I don't know, the big FU inside of me.
Right. Well,
I
I
have like
mean,
a big
that's
one in there because I
right.
had a kid so young, and I was
Hmm.
told when I was 19 and got pregnant that I was not going to finish college. I was told I was going to be living on welfare in the projects, but I was told all of these things that were like, you're you're basically done. If you have this baby, your life is done. And I think that sat in me so that I was like, are you kidding me? So everything I've done up until this point in my life that has shown what I'm capable of just goes right out of the window. Like you have that little faith in me. And I get now where it was coming from
Hmm.
because as a mom, uh, I see, oh my gosh, like it is a huge responsibility to bring a child into the world. But something in me, it just lit a fire. And I said, no one else gets to determine what I'm capable of. And my circumstances are not going to define me. I have the power to be anything that I want to be in my life. And yes, I created this dynamic, and I will also create other things that will be beneficial in my life to support me in this situation. So I had all the faith in myself. It didn't matter what anyone else thought or
Right.
believed.
Well, that's an extraordinary story because so many people in that situation wouldn't have faith in themselves and wouldn't have seen light in what I can only imagine was a very heavy moment,
Mm-hmm.
um, where you're trying to, you thought you were on one path and you're on a new path now.
Mm-hmm. Oh
So,
yeah.
yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about your new book and what compelled you to write it. And it sounds like that probably was,
I should have named it the big FU inside.
Bestseller.
Mhm. Yeah, that's book number two, I guess. Yeah. Mhm.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Yeah,
The,
so this book, Beneath the Skin, is very much talks about very much in alignment with what we spoke to and
mhm,
that time of my life and what that did for me, what it sparked inside of me, and
mhm,
how it was the gas to the fire of what I was able to accomplish,
mhm,
and that nobody was going to tell me otherwise what I was capable of. So I think that there's a point in the book where I talk about how my oldest daughter, her father decided not to be a part of her life, and how that was just like how cold and callous that dynamic was. And in that moment, I had a choice. I could
mhm,
either become the victim of my situation and feel like I was powerless,
mhm,
and that now I'm alone. Now I'm a single mom. I created the same dynamic I was raised in. So all the pain and the hurt I felt of not having my father around, I just created that for this child, for this little girl that I'm holding in my arms. And it was it was a moment of where I said, okay, I did this, but this doesn't have to continue to be my reality moving forward. I'm not a victim. I played a part in this. I made choices that led up to this moment. So now what? Now where do I go from here? And how can I make sure that this doesn't have to be her reality moving forward? Maybe it can be different. I don't just have to accept what is in this moment.
mhm.
And yeah, and that just led to really pushing forward. Another big thing I discuss in the book is being the creating the individual that you want to be in your life.
Mhm.
What I mean by that is I was a mom, I was a single mom, but I was not defined by motherhood.
Mhm.
I was not, it didn't mean that like I had to drop everything else and
Yeah.
now I can only just be this.
Right.
I still very much kept my identity and said, okay, I'm still a college student. I'm still in my young 20s. Like uh I am going to graduate. I'm
Mhm.
determined to make that happen.
Mhm.
And I can do whatever I want in my life. It's up to me. So, that is a large part of what I speak to, just being able to move past the victim story and
Mhm.
becoming the victor of your life, becoming that warrior that blazes through and doesn't allow society or any individual outside circumstances to box you in, to close you in, to keep you where you're at, because that is what unfortunately people expect and
Right.
sometimes sadly want to see happen. And
Mhm.
um and we have so much power within us.
Right.
It is
Yes.
it is, and it's scary how like what exists within our spirits,
Right.
that like when you can tap into that, you are
Mhm.
limitless. You are truly limitless of what it's possible for you to create.
What do you think? Like, how did you get to that mental spot where you were like, nobody's going to define me? Was it just like an inner knowing, or were you exposed to something that allowed you to have the audacity to think that? I mean, because it is audacious in
Mm,
that we so often feel like we are the victim of our
mm, mm,
situation. We are our trauma. We are our situation.
Hmm.
So, I mean, that moment, that is like the key to everything.
It is. Yes. So it's tough to I, I think what came up for me when you asked that question, just to
Mm-hmm.
be fully transparent, is that when I was growing up, I saw I saw two sides of my mom.
Mm-hmm.
I saw this amazing, powerful, confident woman who, regardless of whatever her job was, whether it was restaurants or selling cars or what have you, she really owned it. She put everything into what she did. And I saw a woman that was powerful. And even though, like, on the back end, she lacked a lot of confidence and self-esteem. And she was going through so much in her own life that created that, and had her own childhood and her own stuff, right? That we all have. But when I would see her in her probably most vulnerable states, after a certain amount of time, because I saw it so much, it I said to myself, I don't want to be the victim. I don't want that. I just knew I didn't want that part. I knew that I really loved what she did over here and how she was just so confident and so powerful in these situations. And then I saw when she was at her lowest. And in my mind, I thought it was like a bad thing because it felt for me powerless as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like I could help her or do anything about it. So I said, that's not going to be me. And I think that it just stuck with me as I got older, that I was always going to be that strong, confident, powerful person that could do what I wanted and create what I wanted, and that I wouldn't be a victim. And anytime something put me in a situation where I could fall into that victim mentality, I just automatically diverted or went to the other side of it. So when people, especially when people started telling me, I had a cousin who said, you're going to end up just like your mom. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not.
Oh,
Like
heck no.
the vision, yeah, the vision of like my mom crying like on the steps because she didn't have enough money or she was miserable about something, like that just popped into my head. Like, the heck I am. No, I'm not. Like, I'm completely different. I'm capable of what so much. You're not going to put that onto me. And so it was a fight. It was like a fight for my identity and who I knew that I was and what I was capable of. And it was a choice too, because I can say that it's just as easy to accept like a victim story.
Yeah.
It's just as easy to do that, if not easier sometimes.
Mhm.
And I've been in that place too.
Sure. Yeah, we all have moments like that.
Mhm.
That story so resonates with me because I think when you grow up in an environment like you and I, it sounds like very similar,
Mhm.
you have a choice. You can repeat what you're seeing, or
Mhm.
it can be this model of everything you don't want and everything you don't want to be. And that is something that has very much fueled my own story.
Mhm.
And yeah,
Mhm.
100%.
Yeah.
So that definitely that resonates with me for sure. So it sounds like an interesting read. I can't wait to read it. So what do you think is the message that you want people to take away from your book?
Mm. So what I would, oh, that's a great question. The message I want people to take away is that there's no rules to this life here that we're living. And our lens can be changed. The lens in which we view life can be changed at any point in time. So, like I said before, the choice is ours. And we have an opportunity to step into possibility and create what we want to create in this lifetime. We only have this one life, and we don't know when it's up. We have no idea. Even if we lived a full, let's say 90 years, it's still a blip in time.
Right.
So if we don't get to that point, what can you say you have created or that you have done in this experience? And for me, so much of that is tied to my children, because I know the role that I play as mom is going to ripple onward into my future generations that I will never meet even. So
Yes.
my role here is so important, because there are going to be great, 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 great grandchildren that look back at who I am and what I've done and say, that's where we came from.
Mm-hmm.
So if she can do that, what's possible for me is all the way up here. It's endless. So that's what I'm holding on to. That's where I operate off of, not where I'm at in this moment, but those babies in the future, what they're going to be experiencing and what they're going to be up against,
Mm-hmm.
and what they need to draw from.
Right.
They're drawing from me, even when I'm
Right.
no longer around.
So it sounds like you and I are very much on the same page with generational change. And
Mm-hmm.
that's everything that you just said. So for somebody in that same position where they are ready to start their own path and reinvent themselves, what piece of advice would you give to them?
Well, I would say read this book.
Yes.
Read the book. But just in general, listen to podcasts, listen to your podcast, draw from whatever well you possibly can.
Right.
And, you know, just there's so many resources out here. There's so much information. Find that person that you can connect with. Because for me, like I listened to podcasts, I read books, every one of them have left me with some kind of gem or piece of knowledge or information that I could use in my path and in my journey. And so I just think it's so important to do the work. And I know that statement is used a lot, do the work, but there's no better work that can be done than the work you do on yourself. And because it all starts with you, it starts inside of you, and it starts in your mind. And with a mind that is unfortunately not healed or not conscious and aware of how it's operating and why it's operating, as I spoke to in the beginning of the subconscious mind, then you are inevitably stuck in a place where you are repeating the same reality, and you're the same song and dance with the same people or the same types of people and situations. So doing this kind of work is extremely powerful, and it unlocks things within you and inside of you in levels that you didn't even know existed. And so, just holding on to the knowing that you are a sacred, powerful, infinite being, and move forward with that energy.
That was a lot. That was, yes. I was going to ask you, what takeaway would you want somebody listening to this podcast to
That's
walk away with. But I mean, I just literally mic drop. I don't know how you could expand on that. I mean, honestly, I don't. Um, I don't know if you realized it, but one of the reasons why I started this podcast is I didn't feel good enough. And I noticed other women entrepreneurs didn't feel good enough. But
it.
the acronym is GEM. And you're a
Mm.
gem for sure.
Thank you so much.
I
Actually, do you want to hear something also interesting?
what?
So my government name
Mm-hmm.
is my initials. My government initials are JEM, which yes, yes, yes.
What?
I know, crazy.
What is
So
happening?
synchronicities. There's never a
What
coincidence.
is happening? Amazing.
Oh, thank you,
Wait,
Angela. You've been amazing. Truly.
I I'm fighting back the tears.
Oh.
What the heck?
Oh. Yes. Oh.
I we were meant to have this conversation. It's incredible. I
Hmm.
appreciate your time so much.
I appreciate you. I really do.
Yeah,
And you're creating magic here with your platform. So you
I
should be
appreciate
really
that.
proud of yourself.
Um, I just like you, I followed my heart. I didn't know where it was going. And
Yeah.
moments like this reinforce that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yes.
so, um, so
Keep
yeah.
going.
Oh my
Keep
goodness.
going. You're doing amazing.
Um,
Absolutely.
Thank you. So, where can our listeners connect with you and purchase the book and all the good things and buy some tissues?
Oh my gosh. Yes. I have a couple social media handles. Ari Rose Body Care is my business page. And then
Mm-hmm.
I am the Jess Winns or
Mm-hmm.
the Jess Winns on Instagram as well. And we're on Facebook too. Ari Rose Body Care is on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, Jess Winns on LinkedIn. So people can connect with me, write me, message me. I'm totally like, I love just talking to people and, those types of connections to me, even if it's like a DM, is just really special. It's super
Right.
special.
I know. Yeah. I mean, you just kind of follow your heart. And when anybody reaches out and something resonates with them, it just gives you that little fuel to keep going. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
1000%.
So, absolutely. And this filled my bucket today. I'm gonna need some time to get myself together.
Yes. Take your
But
time.
what a special gift because, starting a podcast was not easy, but it has allowed such amazing conversations like this one to happen
Mhm.
that otherwise, well, what I always say, hey, can we call, have a call and chat about your business?
Right.
But I mean, I'm sure some people would do that, but it's a platform to help other people and share your story. I mean, everybody has such interesting and amazing things to share. And so I so appreciate your time and this amazing
Yeah.
episode.
Thank you, Angela. You're the best. I
Yeah.
really appreciate you. It's
You're so
absolutely
welcome.
divinely connected.
We
Truly.
are. Stars align today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much again to Jess Winns for her time and just the incredible synchronicities and sharing stories of reinventing yourself and emerging from a lot of adversity is absolutely possible. And really, when you look at it, it can be your superpower. So if that is part of your story, absolutely use it to be your strength, not something to hold you back. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. And I mean that in the deepest way possible, because it is really, truly hard to convey in words. The women who reach out to me to be on the podcast and the messages that I receive from listeners on how it is impacting them. It is a privilege to host this platform so I can connect with other women and help encourage anyone out there, but especially moms who want to start and grow their business, that it is absolutely 100% possible. So with that, remember, not only are you good enough, but you are probably overqualified. Thank you again so much for listening. I'm going to leave all of the information about how you can order Jess's book and connect with her and also connect with me in the show notes, mombusinesscoach.com and arirose.com and jesswinns.com. That all will be in the show notes. So thank you so much. I hope you have an amazing week. And yes, I do have another interview with an incredible mompreneur coming for you next week. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode on Mondays when we publish. And thank you so much again for your time. Have a great week. This is your host, Angela Micheli, with the Good Enough Mompreneur podcast. Bye.